G'day and thanks for joining us for another Australia Talks. I'm DK and I'm joined as always by my lovely co-host Ardeet. Today is Wednesday, the 5th of August 2026, and our topics this week are recycled glass helps boost farm productivity and probably not in the way that you would think. And the Northern Territory is set to legalise pepper spray. Of course, we've got our Two Ticks Town Talk, and then we'll jump into This Week in Australian History, and we'll finish off, as always, with the 4X bottle top trivia, which is themed once again this week. It's agricultural themed, so I hope you've got your farmer hat on. No pressure. But before we get into all of that good stuff, let's catch up with the last week. Ardeet, hello, how are you?
Good, DK. A bit of a whinge and a wow. So the whinge was about freaking Disney Plus. Now, I got Disney Plus for the World Series of Poker that's going on at the moment, the final table, and watching it in the lead up for that because I quite like the poker. I thought I'll get that so I've got the live access, and it goes through ESPN, and then ESPN's owned by Disney Plus, so you've got all these stuff bundled in. So, you know, I think it was something like $29 a month, and I thought, oh, okay, well, look, you know, that's just what it's costing, and I'll watch some other things, and but it spits the dummy if you turn a VPN on. Like as soon as a VPN goes on, and I normally run a VPN on my equipment because. Why wouldn't you? I want that extra anonymity, but Disney Plus won't play, and it also doesn't like the Brave browser. It gives some bloody obscure little error, which I asked the friendly AI. And it said, "Oh, this means that it's got a problem with your browser or something," or there's a couple other things. I thought, "Oh, that would be why." And then there was then the other one, which I thought my normal Safari browser on the Mac, it just circled just down, and I thought, oh. So I ended up watching it on the iPad, which was fine to get it, but I thought, oh. It shouldn't be that hard to get something that I'm paying reasonable money for. So that. I mean, you get something like sort of Binge or Stan or Netflix, and they're just nice and robust. You put it on, and they say, chug it out. Unless they've changed it now, I don't use a whole lot of them. We sort of do a month and then forget about it. But that continual sort of grasping for control and trying to get that experience to suit them rather than the consumer, it's getting really wearing for me. So that's a bit of an old man whinge about that. But the actually probably this is an old man one, but in a different way. So the wow, one of the blokes I play pickleball with, and look, he's my age, which is why we're talking about a bit of an old one. He's got a band called the Gold Tops, and went and saw him. First sort of social stuff I've done with the pickleball people. So I said, I'll come along and see your band. And they do covers of like psychedelic era music, Beatles, Stones, Doors, Cream, all that sort of stuff. All the things probably every single one you'd hear, you'd recognise. And it was in a microbrewery, and it's interesting to see how well that model of putting a microbrewery in a light industrial area works. I've been to a number of them over the years. Saves the noise problem. It's a good spot for the brewery, and something that people can easily go to. But the sort of wow part of that, which really surprised me, was their sound setup. Now, look, we were probably 5-6 meters away from them, most of us, and it was still quite enough to talk. I mean, not just sort of like talking at this level that you and me. It's sort of like, a bit more elevated like that, but you could still have a conversation. But they ran it, and I'll have to quiz him a bit more. I had a bit of a chat to him, but they ran it in such a way that it actually sounded like you were listening to a band with a high volume coming at you. So it still had, because you know how you've got to have a bit of volume to get some oomph. Like if everyone's sort of got these pissy little settings on there, it just doesn't have that dynamism. It just not pushing enough air. They still managed to get that sound. And the drum kit, which is the first time I've seen this drum kit, essentially, I don't know whether it was silicon or rubber, but basically all the cymbals were silicon or rubber, and the floor drums were essentially electronic. But look, to my ear, couldn't pick. Yeah, I'm sure someone who's got a good ear would probably pick it. But it just meant you had drums that had the sound able to be controlled as well. And yeah, it was very impressive. And I had chatting to him afterwards, and he was with the lead singer that was there, and I was saying how good it was. And he said, "Oh, I'm glad you noticed." He said, "Our motto is we don't want to interrupt you." And I thought, "Oh, that's a fun little motto to have."
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. So those, I'm not super well versed in electronic drums, but basically, yeah, they're an electric drum set. Essentially, those sort of rubberized drums, and then you can amplify it just like you can with an electric guitar, which is good for a setting like that because you can.
Oh, it's perfect.
Yeah, you can kind of dial in, and I like that idea because sometimes it can be annoying with live music where you go somewhere and then it can just completely drown out the place, which sometimes is a good thing, and other times it's it's kind of annoying, we also want to have a meal and sort of catch up while enjoying some live music, not being dominated by it, if you know what I mean. So that's it's good that they're being sort of courteous as well as entertaining.
And look, also too, it was good because I haven't been out with this group of people before, and so if you don't know people, sometimes just standing there when it's loud music, you sort of do that look and smile at each other and mouth something incomprehensible and smile and nod, and you're sitting there thinking, "Oh God, this." So, yeah. What about you? How's your week been?
It's been good, but I thought I would give everyone a bit of a passport update. Yeah, to let you guys all know, because it's been probably a month since I submitted the passport, so maybe about 5 weeks. We've received my wife's one back, which was just an adult renewal. That one came back very quickly. So it was I had it in my hand about 10 days after we submitted it, which I was actually quite impressed with. So that's a nice, and we didn't pay for the extra, quick one or anything like that. So that was pretty quick, but I do feel like that is not a good indication of how quickly they can knock one out. So if you're listening to this going, I need my passport renewed, do not delay, get it done. Because, they do say it can take up to 6 weeks or something like that. So that was good. Unfortunately, the kids' ones, they're basically as if they treat them as if they're not a renewal, even though they are. They treat them as if they're brand new passports, which is quite frustrating. And as a result, I still don't have them back, but they are. The passport office has told me that I should have that back probably before the end of next week. So all in all, I mean, the kids' ones probably at the end of it probably would take, I'm expecting, about 6 weeks. So a little bit frustrating in that respect, but otherwise, not the end of the world. The UK one, I'm still waiting for them to send back. They did need a bit more information from me, which was a little bit frustrating. Because again, it is just a renewal. You already have my old passport. Just renew it. But they needed to check my name was the same as what it is on my old passport. So they needed some other documents from me. So that was a little bit annoying, but that process is I think the frustration there for me is because it's on the other side of the planet. So all the documents have to go to London. So it does, there's that sort of layover time, but otherwise that process is going pretty smooth. So all in all, not the worst thing, but it's still, I can't get over the bloody price of the Australian passports being, $420 is
it's a sting, isn't it?
It's certainly an added expense to a holiday that, it's not nothing. That's a good day on the vacations worth of
Bloody
fun
oath.
activities and food and all the rest. So, look, it is a 10-year passport, but it's still it is a frustrating expense. I still don't fully think that they justify the price, but look, it is what it is. So,
well, I mean, it's not as if there's any competition, is there?
Well, that's true. You just got to pay it, right? So there's
Yeah.
nothing I can do.
Yeah, it's a simple answer. Oh, well, don't go.
Yeah. So what are you going to do about it, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Sneak out and sneak back in.
Exactly. So, yeah. Now, speaking of sneaking, that's a terrible segue. Pulverized recycled glass.
Sorry, that's probably one of your worst. You're normally halfway there. I'm thinking sneaking. I can't even get there. But let's not point it out.
We're sneaking because we haven't told the users exactly why. The pulverized recycled glass is helping boost farm productivity with the benefits to soil, plants, and livestock as well. And this is as a growing number of Australian farmers are spraying or spreading pulverized grass on their paddocks to boost the productivity of the soils, plants, and the livestock that feed on them. Victorian agronomist. That is such a weird word. It does not roll off the tongue, doesn't it? Agronomist. Peter Norwood has been recommending the Queensland-made, organic product to clients for several years. He said, quote, there could be as much as a 25 to 30% improvement in plant growth and plant productivity. We've got the potential for greater milk production, and in beef and sheep, we've got potential for greater daily body weight gains. This is a bit of a game changer. End quote. And if those numbers hold up, I really do think that is a bit of a game changer. It is a win for the environment as the source material is glass bottles from Queensland's recycler Containers for Change, which pays people 10 cents for their glass empties, which I went and did over the weekend. And look, I only had 300. I've just got a big box. There was 300 cans, bottles, and other bits and pieces in it. But for sort of a 10-minute journey, I got paid $30, and I thought, hey, that's pretty good. And I went and bought some lunch. But hey, got free lunch. The pulverized glass is turned into an agricultural product at a new $4 million factory in Brisbane, co-owned by the agronomist David Archer and a group of investors. The 60-ton ceramic-lined cylindrical tumbler filled with 35 tons of fist-sized ceramic balls breaks the glass down into a variety of sizes, which are then applied to crops and pastures. And side note, sorry, but this machine sounds like incredible to just watch it doing what it does. I think it would be really satisfying to just stand there and watch all this glass get smashed up into pulverized, essentially. Though I would imagine, you'd probably want to wear some PPE. I don't want pulverized glass in my lungs.
Yeah. But you could have something like, a pulverizer cam or something, because I don't imagine it would be open. It would be closed probably, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah.
But you could still film it inside. Well,
Why not? Throw a camera in there and put it on YouTube.
I'd take a peek. Yep.
Yeah, it would be pretty cool, I reckon. It'd be very noisy though. Some farmers have been mixing the talc-like powder with water and they spray it on their plants through the sprayers. Others prefer the dry granules that then, when they're watered in, they sort of break down. Mr. Archer explained the improvements in plant yields, soil health, and animal weight gains are due to silicon, a chemical component of glass. He said, quote, the silicon protects a plant. Sorry, I should say not silicon as in, like the stuff you put in around windows, and not silicone as in the chemical element. So silicon protects a plant against pests and disease and drought by stimulating its natural defenses, its own immune system, if you like. end quote. It is a bonus for the bottom line too, as farmers using it do not need to apply so much fertilizer, because the silicon unlocks elements in the soil that are locked up and unavailable otherwise to the plants. The Brisbane factory trucks out 20 tonnes of the ground glass powder and granules a week to farmers growing apples, wine grapes, grain, cane, dairy, beef all around the country. And one of Peter Norwell's clients in Warrnambool, farmer manager Tony Donovan, sprayed the silicon on a third of his 14,000 hectares that he manages for Midfield Meats and Dairy Operations. And he said that the performance of his beef cattle over the winter had surprised everyone. He said, quote, "We've taken winter weight gains from 0.7 to 0.8 a day up to 0.4 and 2 kilos a day. They're big percentages and fast growth. We've got to say we're measuring it all in the same way. It's been quite amazing to think that the research has been done on it now for some 70, 80, 90 years, and the benefits have been shown, yet it hasn't been incorporated into our standard agronomy." End quote, which, this isn't new tech. But as the Iran war slowed international shipping earlier and continues, imported fertiliser supplies in Australia have slowed and prices have soared. So that vulnerability has made the search for more homegrown, pun intended, alternatives with a financial imperative as well. Mr. Donovan said that adding silicon is one of several management changes that he has made to reduce reliance on imported urea or nitrogen fertilizers. He said that he will continue, the product will continue to play a bigger role in coming years. So not strictly an Australian invention, but it's not something we're seeing being adopted globally yet. This is one of these ones where it's not a secret, but I think the alternatives have kind of, our reliance on over-fertilization over the last sort of 50 years has kind of been like, we'll just keep doing this. But as we're starting to find that that's not good, it's becoming more expensive, so on and so forth, we're starting to look further afield. And this could be a potentially huge opportunity for Australia to take a bit of a lead in this sort of research. So how do you feel about this? Are you ready to throw some powdered glass on your garden at home?
I'd probably give that a crack. I like the idea of turning glass into grass. I think that is exciting to hear something else being tried. And I know there's consistent sort of striving for innovation in the agricultural industry, but I thought this one was particularly interesting. And given some of those results, now I did hear a bit of skepticism around the traps that some of the claims might be a little bit overhyped, and I suppose there is a with something new. There's all and particularly too is the people in this article have a bit of a barrow to push. There is often a bit of excitement with that, but what I particularly liked was the side-by-side tests, like that one down at Warrnambool, you said, with the cattle, getting those results back and doing the same way and being able to compare like with like. They're ones I look at that and I think, no, this sounds like there is something to it. As you said, and I didn't realise it was this old too, that it's an established idea. It is organic too, which to me is a big plus, particularly in Australia. We've got so much stuff that's organic or very low levels compared to a lot of other countries, that it actually becomes a bit of a selling point for our product. And I suppose the thing that's important in this to me is one of the shifts in my thinking about gardening and growing stuff was someone I think it might have been Jack Spirko, who does the Survival podcast. If it wasn't him, it was one of his guests, although I'm pretty sure it was him. And he was saying he's not growing plants, he's nurturing soil in order to create the right environments for plants to grow themselves. And it's always...
that's such a great reframing of it. Yeah.
Yeah. It is, and it really swapped my head around thinking, oh no, I've got to get the soil right, and then of course the plants grow because the soil's right, and that flows on. You look at something like the meat. Someone might say, well, hang on, why have you put glass in the? How is glass in the ground giving you an extra 2 kilos a day or? That was a day, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a day.
That surprised me how big they were. Even
0.7 to they basically doubled the growth per day.
Yeah.
From 0.7 to 1.4 to 2 kilos, which is insane.
Yeah. So you get the soil right. That gets the plants right. The plants are healthier. They get more nutrition. They get more protein in them. They get to the upper end of their protein bands. So something like the cattle coming along that's feeding on them, or the dairy cows that are still needing to have that nutrition, they get a corresponding boost as well. So it's interesting, that chain that goes along the way, and then you get better products. That way, you're going to get better food going back into what the humans eat. You're going to get a little bit more cost effective. I really like that simple input. I like that it's being tested, and it's been tested side by side. I'm very positive. Yeah, look, we'll see what the. You made the joke about watching it in the tumbler and wanting to have a mask and that. I don't know what the risks are with. Whether it can get into your lungs, and if it does, whether it's a problem, or whether it's a case of, listen, farmers are frequently dealing with dust and chemicals. This is just another one of them. So I don't know what the end results of those will be, but so far on the surface of it, as reported to my layperson's ears, there's something about it makes sense, and it's looking positive, and it's another one of those things that I think, I like that thinking a little bit out of the box, taking something out of this problem that we've got with with Hormuz, and now Red Sea getting shipping problems, and we also don't know what's going to happen with your Straits of Malacca. There's that's potential for tolls, and there's a whole lot of stuff going on there. To have something that can give us a homegrown edge that we're not having to import, worth pursuing. Very positive about it. So what about you? What do you think about it, and did you know it was this old?
Two things. One, I had no idea that the research does go back that far, and because I'd never heard of this before. But it does make sense. And I did look it up as well. If the glass powder, basically, is it dangerous? I'm thinking more of a respiratory sort of danger rather than anything else. And the good news is it's generally speaking non-toxic. So glass is biologically inert in most situations. So generally, it's not gonna harm you in any meaningful way, like if you swallow it or something like that. Other than, of course, it can be sharp, like it's non-toxic basically. However, it is obviously not good to breathe in. You don't get a type of like silicosis because it's not a dangerous crystalline structure. But of course, any dust in your lungs is not good. It can build up and stuff like that. So it can obviously irritate and things like that. So if you are around this product, I would very much recommend that you do wear a respirator, particularly if it's that like pulverized, like talc like consistency. However, it's probably not going to kill you if you look at it the wrong way or anything like that. But I'm not a doctor, so don't take that as gospel.
Yeah, exactly. It's just an opinion.
This one is I feel like this is it's sort of funny where we sort of often we're hearing about stuff where we already knew a thing, but for whatever reason it wasn't financially viable, or access to the product was restricted for whatever reason, whether it be an engineering or technological reason, or perhaps a regulatory issue. And so this one, I think, is fantastic from a point of view that they're also using a product that is otherwise a waste product. So a lot of glass, of course, is recycled, but not all of it is. And so if we can continue to recycle our glass, there's two big things to recycle. It's glass and aluminium. If you can recycle glass and aluminium, if you don't do any other recycling and you just do those two things, you're making a huge difference. Plastic recycling's pretty meh. It's depending on the type of plastic, if it's actually beneficial or not. But glass and aluminium absolutely is. Of course, steel as well. But most people aren't running around with big chunks of steel that they're ready to recycle. But you will come across, of course, in your daily life, a lot of glass and aluminium, drinks containers and things like that. Definitely, or sorry, for the Americans, what do they call it? Aluminum. So definitely recycle those things. And so we're taking a waste product that this pulverization process is exactly how they remanufacture glass anyway. So this kind of is already a step in an established industry supply chain. It's just, I think it goes to that next level. They powderize it rather than just break it down into small chips, which would then be fed into a furnace to remanufacture glass and stuff like that. So there's a huge glass supply chain that this can basically take advantage of, which is amazing, quite frankly. So we're turning essentially what is a waste product. I sort of use that term loosely because, of course, it does have a process that it can be remanufactured into new glass and stuff like that. But we can take an existing product that there is a lot of waste in that industry, and we can now use it for what I see as pretty fantastic gains. Of course, this should be taken with a grain of glass because, of course, depending on the deficiencies of the soil, you may or may not have some of these benefits in this huge yield as we're getting in other things. So, but I do think it's a great new old tool to have in the back pocket, and I would imagine it's probably not hugely expensive either, particularly compared to other like chemical fertilizers and things like this. I can't imagine they're charging an absolute fortune for this. So if you can add this into your existing sort of fertilization regime, which a lot of farmers would already have, their preferred fertilizers, and they go through the rigmarole. But it's a huge expense, depending on the size of the farms, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So if you can get a product like this that I'm assuming is affordable, and you're getting this big of a yield, to be honest, maybe you don't care if it's that affordable because the yields that you're getting are more than covering the costs. I would imagine the dairy farm, the cattle farm down at Waterball, with that sort of gains per day, your cattle are going to be worth significantly more than they would have been had you not been able to do this. So, there's that huge financial incentive for farmers, which I think is also fantastic. And if we're making more produce on the land that we have, that's better for everyone. So, look, this is exciting. I'm glad that we're still doing research, for lack of a better term, into these sort of innovations and going, hey, what have we known but we're not really utilizing, and what can we actually start a new supply chain up for? And this is pretty cool. So if you are a farmer or you know a farmer that's interested in this, you'll find some stuff in the show notes. None of this is sponsored, just so you know. We're just passing on the information that we've found through this. So we don't endorse any specific companies or anything like that. But I think it is an interesting idea, and if there's some value for our farmers, because we love our farmers. Pass on that knowledge, and who knows, we could see this as maybe a huge massive industry moving forward. Exciting stuff.
Yeah, it is exciting.
All right, let's move on. It's now time for our Two Ticks Town Talk.
I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Across the desert, fair man. I've breathed the mountain air, man. I've traveled.
Right, this week we head to South Australia, to Pukatja. And I like this one just because of how it developed. I mean, we often talk about how the interactions between Europeans and Aboriginal people often go when we've done our Two Ticks Town Talks, and mates, the podcast know, DK and I sort of think, oh God, here's another one. Not saying everything was hunky-dory there, but this is definitely, I thought, more of a positive story, which is why I wanted to, which is also why it caught my eye. So Pukatja, which was formerly known as Ernabella after the property that was there, and it's known in Pintinjara as Anapala. It's an Aboriginal community in the Anangu, Pintinjara, Yankunytjatjara lands in the far north region of South Australia. So it's usually shortened to the APY lands for probably obvious reasons. So it's one of 6 main communities on the API land. It's located in the eastern Musgrave Ranges. They go, that's about 30k south of the Northern Territory border, which also extends up over into WA as well. It's about 330k southwest of Alice Springs, and by road it's about 1400k from Adelaide. About 730 metres elevation and 412 population. A couple of little factlets about the areas. They don't observe daylight saving time there, and they remain on Australian Central Standard Time all year round. And it's also one of the few areas in Australia to have experienced multiple large earthquakes in recorded history. So they had a 5.7 in 2013 and a 6.1 in 2016. And there's apparently something like other parts of Australia get smaller, regular quakes, but the APY lands, their geography means that they release their geographical stress through occasional larger events. So didn't dig into that, just had it as a factlet, but I thought that was interesting. So, yeah. So before it became a Presbyterian mission, it was a pastoral lease. It was a pastoral lease. So the colonisation in the region began with the collection of dingo scalps by doggers, who they sought the scalps to help protect the sheep flocks, and they were getting there was a bounty on them. So the local Aboriginal people, with they know the land and got really good hunting skills, collected the scalps, and they were paid in like rations and clothing and other goods. And then as inevitably happens with people, relationships of various type developed between the doggers and the local people. Some of the doggers cohabited with the local women. Groups of the Anangu people sometimes travelled with the doggers, and some of them even established themselves as doggers in their own right. Just got the scalps themselves and got paid. So those pastoral leases existed on the edge of the Western Desert from the 1880s, though there was just marginal development up around Pukatja region, the Musgrave Ranges, because as you would imagine, it was arid and labour intensive, and which also meant that the pastoralists and the Aboriginal people had to have a good working relationship up there. So the Pintinjara and Yankunytjatjara people, and they call themselves Anangu, have lived in that broad region for many thousands of years. It's part of a Western desert cultural block. And even after the British colonisation of the Australian continent from 1788 and South Australia from 1836, basically the Anangu remained largely undisturbed for many years. Occasional encounter, but tended to be somewhere where the Europeans didn't go. So, they didn't. I suppose they didn't have a lot of exposure to that initial, what was sometimes just seemed to be bloodlust or ignorance or clash of cultures. So, So in the early 20th century, the Yankunytjatjara people began migrating east, and then groups of the Pitjantjatjara moved into the Musgrave region from the west. And so the majority of families in there at the moment in the community identify as Pitjantjatjara. In 1921, the South Australian government proclaimed the Northwest Aboriginal Reserve, which sort of covered most of what's the API lands. Then on a trip to Ernabella, as Pukatja was known in 1935, there's a bloke, a medical doctor, and he was also an Aboriginal rights campaigner, Charles Dugid. He was a Scottish bloke. He'd noticed the discrimination and heard reports of the abuse of Aboriginal men's labours and sexual abuse of women. So he advocated establishing a mission to sort of like act as a buffer between the Aboriginal people and the encroaching white settlements. So Charles Dugid, he was born in Scotland, studied at the Uni of Glasgow, and after working as a doctor in Glasgow and serving as a ship's medical officer on a voyage to Australia, he emigrated permanently in 1912. Married Irene Isabella Young in Melbourne later, and then moved to Adelaide. During the First World War, he was a captain in the Royal Australian Army Medical Corps. After his first wife died, he remarried in 1930 and became a surgeon and general practitioner in Adelaide. Then there was a massacre of Aboriginals, as often happens in another area, the Coniston massacre, which his observation of conditions for Aboriginal people in the Northern Territory it spurred his activism for Aboriginal rights. So he served as president of the Aborigines Protection League and was a founding member of the South Australian Aborigines Protection Board. In fact, so that in 1972, the community elders who called Dugid Chilpa, respected old man, wrote to him saying that they wanted him to be buried at Ernabella, so the Aborigines will always remember that he was one of us and that he faithfully helped us. And then eventually when he did die, his body was flown there and buried amongst his friends at the Mission Cemetery. So that was a bit of an honour and gave an indication of the esteem in which he was held. And so what he...
No, that's cool.
Yeah, I think so too. And, that you would have that sort of honour bestowed upon you.
Yeah.
So what he did, he persuaded the General Assembly of the Presbyterian Church to purchase the Ernabella lease. It was about 500 square miles. Bit of opposition, but he got it through. Established the mission in 1937, and Dugid, he set out clear principles. There was to be no compulsion or imposition of European ways of life, no deliberate interference with tribal custom. Only people trained in particular skills were to be on the staff. The staff had to learn the tribal language, and the mission respected the culture and traditions of the Pitjantjatjara and Yankunytjatjara people. They offered medical help and education with no conditions attached. Children were never separated from their families, and people moved to the mission of their own accord, and mainly because they saw it as a place of care and protection. So 1940, they finished the school building there. English was not taught as a first language. It was introduced as a second language only a few years later. Subjects were taught in Pitjantjatjara, and enrolments rose from 25 in 1940 to 200 in 1943. So in 3 years to basically go up 10 times, it indicates how well they were doing. Hymns and part of the Bible were translated into Pitjantjatjara, and the first baptisms occurred in 1952, but there was very little proselytising. Traditional ways just coexisted with new practices, and they had a number of long-serving staff. So it's all one of those things of thinking, well, that's just, if you're going to do it, you're going to put that, set this thing up, going to have that sort of place where, the local people and the Europeans can meet. To me, struck me as a very sensible way to do it, because we saw how when in the past, or in other areas, there was just those head-on clashes, and it was so often violent, whereas this was just so, positive and nurturing and good both ways. Because you want to have those, good relationships.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So they established a craft room in 1948, forming the basis of what became Ernabella Arts, which is Australia's oldest continually running Indigenous arts centres. In the 50s and 60s, most of the art forms were like hand-loomed, woven fabrics and hand-pulled and knotted floor rugs, featuring a unique pattern known as Anapala Yaku Walka, or Ernabella design. And then in the 1970s, some of the key Ernabella artists travelled to Indonesia and learned batik. And for quite a while there, it was renowned for intricate batik silks. There's some in museums and art galleries directly from Ernabella. They basically changed from that in 2003, and the batik studio was converted to ceramics, and then the artists started to develop distinctive forms and styles in ceramics, which I did look at. I thought, I like their ceramics, because you can see, and there's a link to the Ernabella Art Centre in the show notes. I did like a lot of the ceramics, but when I looked up the batik silks, there are some really impressive designs. But I suppose that's how art goes. It moves on, explore, go into something else. And then in more recent years, the senior women there began depicting their chukapa, the sacred stories of the country, culture and law in their work. So the centre's Indigenous owned by them and governed, and it forms part of the APY Art Collective. So the responsibility for the administration of the mission, they formally handed over to the Ernabella Community Council, which later became the Pukatja Community Council, in 1st January 1974. And the settlement was later funded by the federal government as an outstation during the 80s. And then in 81, the South Australian Parliament passed the Anangu Pitjantjatjara Yankunytjatjara Land Rights Act, granting freehold title to the Pitjantjatjara, Yankunytjatjara and Ngurrtjatjara people over approximately about 100,000 square kilometres of land. So it's actually got freehold title to that South Australian portion of the Musgrove Ranges and to that area, and that was granted under that legislation, which is an unusual thing in Australia, actual freehold, because there's always little catches when you look in the fine print. So if you want to go there, you have to have a permit. If you're non-Anangu people and you're just visiting, you have to get a permit and apply for them to go onto the APY lands. If you're just wanting to scoot through, you're not going to get a permit. So you can't just amble through. I mean, if there's exceptions apply to certain officials on duty, but you have to have a reason there, and you have to have permission. Like if you want to go to somewhere like Pukatja. So that was, I thought that was a good story. That was part one, and I like the positive story of this region. Part two, we'll take a different tack and hear about an infamous visitor. But that's this week's Two Ticks Town Talk of the town of Pukatja in South Australia.
Very good. I guess sort of commenting on what you said there at the end about, you do have to have permission basically to get to some of these communities, which I do think is kind of a cool thing. But it's not just so, especially our international listeners sort of realize this isn't sort of like, well, what happens if you drive down the wrong road and you sort of stumble into town? I think it's worth just remembering exactly where this is. This is in remote outback Australia, geographically near the center of the country. It's you're not just going to be stumbling along the road you're going. And look, if you were lost and you did roll into town, as unlikely as that is, if you genuinely were lost and you rolled into town, I don't think the first thing everyone would do is have a go at you. I think it would be a bit like, look, you're not supposed to be here, but clearly you're in a bit of trouble and would help you out, sort of thing like that. It's like driving down someone's driveway. But that's probably a better way to do it. Look, you shouldn't be there. You're not supposed to be here, but we're not gonna just cut off your head while as soon as you drive into town. It's a bit like that, But no, it's such a beautiful part of the country too. I really love these remote towns and looking at some of the photos. And the landscape there, the mountains, I don't know. It's sort of, I always kind of find it like a little bit sort of interesting and a bit kind of unusual how many mountains we have in these remote deserts. It's sort of, you don't really think of them as like mountainous terrain, but there are a lot of these mountains out in these sort of regions. And some of them can be quite tall, but again, it's not really what you think about when you think of sort of the outback.
No.
Absolutely beautiful landscape and an incredible piece of history between the indigenous people of the areas and the European newcomers. And it shows you that there's always been certain groups of people that have been able to come together, have that mutual respect, have that understanding, and we're better for it when we have that dialogue and that respect and that, that respect for culture and all of those kind of things, rather than just kind of coming in and steamrolling, which we've seen time and time again. And I do think a lot of that sort of comes from almost like a deliberate, malicious will of not wanting to know these people. I don't care, and as a result, I'm just gonna shoot you, or we're gonna have a fight or whatever. And that can go both ways, mind you.
Yeah.
It's not always
sure
the white settlers that were doing it, but more often than not, it was. So it's lovely to hear of stories where that wasn't exactly the case. I'm sure there's more to the story, so I don't want to ruin anything that may be coming, but
we don't. It won't be a spoiler. It's not. Okay, the thing that's coming is not something horrible between the Europeans and the Pinajara people. It takes a little bit of a turn, but it's sort of based on a visitor to Pukatja. So no, nothing happens there. So if people think, I hope it doesn't go to hell. No, it doesn't. That's still going. It's still a nice story, which is what I liked. It was good to get one of these ones, an interesting part of the country that, both DK and I, really find fascinating and love, but also a story that in some ways is a little bit unusual for some of those early days. And just that you had, someone like Dugid, the Scottish bloke, who bothered to do something and set it up. And in fairness to him, that the General Assembly of the Presbyterian Church, forked out the money for the lease and buying it, and that then there was, they obviously had people working there and getting the cooperation of the government, as well as, you've still got I don't know whether you would call community elders a government, but in some ways it's analogous. That still has to work both ways. So I thought that was really positive.
Yeah, no, I think it is as well. How awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. The Northern Territory will look to legalise pepper spray by the end of the year. And that's right, the Northern Territory will legalise pepper spray by the end of the year after the government declared its trial of the non-lethal self-defence tool as a success. Northern Territory Chief Minister Leah Finch, I don't know how to pronounce. Sorry, it's Finocchiaro, I think it is. Is that your understanding of? I haven't
got her name in front of me. Finocchiaro sounds.
Yeah,
correct.
We'll go with that. I apologise if I'm mispronouncing that. She confirmed that the trial, which was originally due to end in September, would be extended until the 31st of December while legislation is drafted to make the change permanent. If passed, the Northern Territory will become the second Australian jurisdiction after Western Australia to legalise pepper spray for personal protection. Under the current trial, pepper spray can only be purchased and carried by people older than 18. However, the government is now considering lowering the minimum age to 16 and allowing household access, including permitted family members, to purchase the spray on behalf of other relatives. The government said anecdotal evidence from the trial had been overwhelmingly positive, with some people reporting that they had avoided confrontations simply by warning an alleged attacker that they were carrying the spray. More than 3,200 people in Darwin purchased 5,144 canisters since the trial began, with the overwhelming majority sold in the city of Darwin. Northern Territory Police have confirmed that just 43 prohibited purchases, making less than 1.5% of the buyers, had been identified, with 61 canisters being seized following compliance checks. The announcement comes as the Northern Territory government claimed offences across the territory had fallen by 25% since it came to power 2 years ago. And the latest crime stats back up this claim, with the latest crime statistics showing a positive trend across many of the offences that impact Territorians when comparing the last 12 months, ending in May 2026. Across the territory, domestic violence had fallen by 13%, assaults were down 10%, and sexual assaults had decreased by 12%. Household break-ins had reduced 24%, and commercial break-ins down 29%.
They're big reductions.
Huge reductions.
I know it's not just because of the pepper spray. That's part of it, but they're massive.
Absolutely massive. Seriously impressive results. Motor vehicle thefts had fallen 23%. While these figures are encouraging, police do acknowledge that there are still areas of concern, with increases in offences, including robbery, domestic violence, and motor vehicle theft, recorded in some locations, including Palmerston, just outside of Darwin, Katherine, and Tennant Creek. And police will continue to target these areas through proactive, intelligence-led policing. So, overall, Ardeet, what do you think of this? Obviously, the trial appears to go well. Is this something you would choose to carry if you could? Just have it in the backpack or something like that?
In an absolute heartbeat. Have no hesitation whatsoever about carrying it on me as I went about my daily business, and having it in several places at home. And it'll be one of those things that with what I do and where I go and my lifestyle, I'd basically be replacing it every time it was expired without actually using the stuff. But if I ever had to be in that situation, I would be pleased that I had it. I completely in favour of this. I want to see it spread to the other states. I mean, Western Australia has not quite as liberal as what the NT has done, but you can still have it, and if it's justifiable, you're supported in using it. And WA's had it for a number of years now, and there's very, very few instances of people abusing it. In fact, it's one of the it's something that if I'm arguing with people online, I do often get on my hobby horse about pepper spray or capsicum gel. I prefer the idea of gel rather than spray. It's more controlled, and people will make the comment about what happens if the criminals get hold of it. I say, do your own, have an online search for how much of a problem it's been in WA, and you'll see that it's virtually negligible. And look, I don't care whether you can point to one or two examples. That doesn't, someone's been sprayed thing. Let's completely disempower everybody else. I don't go that way. There's a certain amount of cost with things like this that I think is an appropriate amount to pay. And I think this trial, they made it public. They gave a clear outline of what they were going to do. They've kept track. They've kept good figures, and they've produced results and can demonstrate, yep, this seems to have done the job. So I'm hoping that will set a bit of a trend in Australia. I like that as having a non-lethal, and yes, I know sometimes in some instances there have been occasions where some people have had a horrible reaction to it and been, badly affected, and in some cases died. Yes, I understand that. That's part of the cost of having this, and it's unfortunately it can happen in tiny little situations, but that's rare outliers, and to me that's no excuse to that's no reason to be against something like this. I like the idea of how it gives it hands some personal responsibility back to people. Now I know people say, "Oh yeah, but the police are there for that." Yeah. Well, very good. That expression when seconds matter, the police are only minutes away, and that's not giving a spray at the. No pun intended. It's not giving a spray at the cops. They're humans, and sheer physics dictate they can't be following you around. So I like the idea that instills a mindset of personal responsibility. I know they're giving it I think they had the age limit there as 16-year-olds. I know that's sort of. Some people think, oh God, I was an idiot at 16. I happen to be one of those people who think I was an idiot at 16 as well. But again, I think it's also a reasonable age at which you can start giving that personal responsibility to people. And probably like everything else, young people, and let's face it, mainly young men, are going to be stupid with things like cars and dangerous things, but it's no reason not to give it to the majority who aren't irresponsible with it. So, yep, big fan of it. I think it's something that we need more of in Australia. I like that it's a method of self-defence, and yeah, big thumbs up from me. And to me, it's not something that will only end in tears. It's something that I think will grow our society in a positive way, in my opinion. Now, what's your opinion on it being legalised, and what's your opinion on people having this extra element of self-defense available to them?
I guess I'm a little bit torn. I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here. I think broadly speaking, it's not a bad thing. Your pepper spray is one of these non-lethal tools that there's been a lot of research about. It's been available for a long time in other parts of the world, and broadly speaking, yes, of course, with everything there's fatalities. You know, people trip over a bloody curb and die. You know, like you wait long enough, and I guarantee you, someone will die of everything. I'm sure some of them, died posting a letter or something like that, right? So, you know, if we get that out of the way for a minute and say there's a reasonable amount of risk that's associated with these less than lethal self-defense tools, and this one seems to be, out of all of them available, pretty damn safe. It's also, as someone that has been tear gassed while I was in defense, I can tell you now, this stuff is freaking horrendous, like horrible. Again, you know, caveat it, the vast majority of people and the vast majority of times it is not going to leave any sort of lasting problem other than get the hell away from me and don't come back. You're gonna learn that lesson pretty bloody quickly if you go near someone with pepper spray. Yeah. And so from that point of view, I do think it's a good idea. Would I carry it in the life that I live, a bit like yourself, in the life that I live and the places I regularly go? I don't feel the need that I would need to carry something like this. But if it was available to me, I can't see the harm of having some like in the glove box of my car or something like that. If something really escalated, it would always be good to have, you know, in the back pocket sort of thing. That all said, I do wonder how much these statistics of these crime statistics that have fallen significantly. These are collected by the territorial police. Is this a case of, you know, what you decide to measure, you can very much shape statistics quite easily. This is well known. These numbers are massive. And so there's a little bit of me that's...
Just to clarify that, in case I missed it, they weren't claiming that was just due to pepper spray, though, were they? They were saying since their policing... Since their changes to policing and the way that they did things, which included having this in here, that's part of the results they're getting. That's correct, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
So they're definitely not saying it's because of, but they're saying as a result of a bunch of policies, this being one of them, these things have changed. And it might be completely true, but there is a little bit of me that can't help but be skeptical about these sorts of claims going, is that really what's going on? Or is this also part of a case of you have changed the way that you're recording your statistics, and as a result, you can kind of massage the numbers to look a bit better than they are? I don't know.
Yeah.
I also don't live in the territory, so it's easy for me to be so skeptical.
I'd be skeptical too. You are talking about bureaucrats, but
yeah. And look, it is in the Northern Territory government's best interest to, you know, produce results, whether they be real or, you know, maybe a little bit massaged or something along those lines. So is that fair for me to say? I can't really, you know, take this all with a grain of salt. I'm just pointing out that there could be a bit of funny business going on. I'm not saying there definitely is. I also do wonder, moving forward, will this pepper spray continue to be a success, or is the success because it's a new thing and kind of, because there's only been 3,200 people that have purchased pretty much 2 cans each, not quite 2 cans each, but for, you know, let's just call it that. So it's not hugely widespread, and I can definitely understand why, particularly late at night, you know, if there's people roaming around and you just say, listen, mate, I've got pepper spray, that could definitely de-escalate a situation before it happens. And I think that's probably the big value here. The thing that kind of bothers me is that threat going to be maintained long term, or are people going to kind of go, maybe you do, maybe you don't, you know, he can't pepper spray us all and stuff like that. So I'm not sure if this is a short term benefit and it's going to dwindle, or if this is genuinely a good thing that's actually going to make the territory a lot safer, because there is a lot of petty crime and things like that up in the territory. And so anything we can do to make that area of the country safer, I think, is a good thing. There's lots of amazing, amazing places in the territory, and it's full of a lot of great, great people. But there are unfortunately small groups of people that kind of ruin it for everybody else. And I do hope this may be one of the tools that make the territory a much safer place for everyone. I'm not sure that this is a silver bullet, though. I think there needs to be more work done with communities and you know, we need to get into that grassroots and, you know, let's turn people away from crime before they get to it and all of that kind of stuff. But at the moment when someone's saying to you, hey, you know, give me your wallet, you can go, how about some pepper spray to the face? You know, that sounds like a benefit. What does concern me as well is this could be the beginning of an escalation. So right now it's been a success. Will that be the case in 12 months, 2 years, 5 years? Or is it now, because you could be carrying pepper spray, now the muggers are carrying knives or something like that, you know? So it could be, and I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I am kind of, if I'm playing devil's advocate, I'm again a little bit skeptical about the long-term benefits of a program like this. Obviously, it has been quite well over the last 12 months, but is this going to? And I want it to. I want it to be a success long-term. But I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic, but we'll see how it goes in the next few years, I reckon.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a fair comment. Yeah. It's a good start. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah. Speaking of good starts and seeing how it goes, let's get stuck into This Week in Australian History.
Well, this week in Australian history, we're coming 31st of July and 1st to 6th of August. July 31st in 1858, the first game of Australian rules football is played between Melbourne Grammar School and Scotch College, and it founded the AFL code. 1902, 96 men and boys were killed in a coal mine at Mount Kembla in New South Wales, one of Australia's worst mining accidents.
I hate that you said 96 men and boys.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because, of course, the children, they yearn for the mines with their small hands. But what a horrible waste of life.
Yeah. August 1st, 1791, the Third Fleet arrives at Port Jackson. It had 11 ships and transported more than 2,000 convicts and military personnel and supplies from Britain to the new New South Wales colony. 1902, the magazine New Idea is first published. It's a women's magazine with practical domestic advice and fashions and recipes and stories aimed at like Australian households.
Yeah, it's a gossip rag, let's be honest.
Well, now it has sort of, I don't know whether it's still even around, but it has sort of become that. But in its early days, it had definitely had a niche and a good way to get some information out. But yeah, you wouldn't sort of be rushing to buy it now. Well, I wouldn't be. So
no, look, and if you're one of those people that do enjoy it, so be it. You know, it's a guilty pleasure, but I don't even think I've seen. My mum used to buy it occasionally, but I don't even think I've seen it these days. But I couldn't even tell you if they still make them. But
well, I suppose magazines like that have sort of had a little bit of, when you can look up so much stuff online, there's a lot of things with magazines that just sort of think, oh, why would you get them? But I don't know. I'll have to go to the supermarket. I'll have to have a look.
Yeah, I've looked it up. They have a website. Yep. I'm not sure if they're still publishing the magazine. I'm sure they probably do.
Okay. 1905, Floss Greig becomes the first woman admitted to practice as a barrister in Australia. Great name, Grata Floss Matilda Greig. they passed some Victorian legislation known as the Foss-Greig Enabling Act to remove barriers preventing women from practicing law. 1984, Australian banks are deregulated, so foreign banks were invited to operate in Australia about a month and a bit later. So that was the Hawke Labor government. They deregulated the system as part of a whole of the wide-ranging economic reforms they did in the 1980s, which took off. There was controls on interest rates and lending and banker industry entry that had limited competition. So, yeah, look, I suppose I think it was probably a good idea. You had to have it that way. There's still a lot of controls on the banks, but yeah, it certainly was tied up in a nice bundle before that for that small subset of what is now the larger banking industry. August 2nd, 1851, gold is first discovered in Ballarat, Victoria, leading to the Victorian Gold Rush. 1989, the Australian cricket team, captained by Alan Border, wins the Ashes in England for the first time since 1934. 1997, Stuart Diver he was a ski instructor. He's rescued as the sole survivor of the Thredbo landslide, which buried 2 ski lodges and killed 18 people. So he basically survived for several days in a small air pocket before a big dramatic rescue. It would probably do your head in a little bit, I would imagine.
I would imagine, though. I feel like he missed his namesake, right? It's Stuart Diver, and he was a ski instructor. Shouldn't have been there, mate. You should have been on the Great Barrier Reef.
Yeah. Because it's not as if you'd get left there.
No.
Or he could have been one of those cave divers underwater, because that seldom goes wrong.
Oh, yeah. No, thanks.
Yeah. DK's and my shared horror. August 3rd, 1980, Australia House opens in London. That was home of the Australian High Commission. It's the longest continuously occupied foreign mission in London. 1962, the first members of the Australian Army Training Team Vietnam arrive in Vietnam. That was Australia's initial military commitment to the Vietnam War, by no means the last. August 4th, 1845, the ship Cataraqui is wrecked off the coast of Tassie, and the 406 people on board drowned, making it one of the worst civil maritime disasters in Australian history. 1914, Australia enters World War I. 400,000 Australians participate directly. That was following Britain's declaration of war on Germany, which meant that Australia automatically entered as a dominion of the British Empire. August 5th, 1806, Captain William Bligh arrived in Sydney to take over the governorship. So he'd been previously famous for the mutiny on the Bounty, and he arrived to become the 4th governor of New South Wales. But he's obviously one of the popular. His strict administration and attempts to curb the power of the New South Wales Corps led to the Rum Rebellion of 1808, and he was deposed by the military. So, there. 1944.
You would have thought that he would have learned his lesson, right?
You would. There was obviously something about the bloke. Now, steel manning. It could have been that he was sent on difficult missions, but at some point you do have to sit there and think, is it me?
Yeah. Like 2 rebellions in this side of the world, and you're like, oh no, it's these bloody Aussies. It's not me.
Yeah, exactly. 1944, at least 545 Japanese prisoners of war attempt to escape from a camp in Cowra, and over 200 of them died. So it was one of the largest prison camp breakouts of the Second World War. And if you do a search on the podcast site for Cowra, you'll find a bit more information on that if you want to chase it up a bit further.
Yeah.
1947, Australia becomes a member of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. That's part of the post-war international economic order established at Bretton Woods. August 6, 1915, the Battle of Lone Pine begins on Gallipoli. Through that, 7 Australians awarded the Victoria Crosses for that battle, which gives you a bit of an indication of the calibre of people there and the hardships and just the absolute shocking place to be. Which is just understating it. I tried to keep the profanities down there. 1986, the retailers Coles & Co. and Myer Proprietary Limited amalgamate to make Coles and Myer one of Australia's largest retail groups. 1986, a record 328 millimetres of rain is dumped on Sydney, New South Wales in a single day, and resulting floods killed 6 people. And in fact, I clearly remember walking across a flooded oval with Mrs. Ardeet. We just thought, just sitting on this bus, we're just not going to get home in time. So we were in our work clothes, the suit and her business thing, and we just thought, stuff it, and we just enjoyed doing the walk across, knowing we'd get home soon enough and get changed and warm. But yeah, it was like a normal sort of sports oval. I think it was about up to our thighs. I could be remembering that incorrectly, but yeah, that was it wasn't fun for the people who died, but that was a novelty for us, and it was just bucketing.
Well, I mean, you can't say that though, because they could have died from playing so much in the floodwater and having so much fun that their hearts gave out. They could have been having a great time.
They could have. Then the puppies went away to the farm. You could be right. Yes, you're right. That's probably exactly what happened. 1996, on August 6th, they did the census. And just as a reminder, you should have your envelopes if you're here in Australia. If you're not, well, you don't need to worry about it. But if you're here in Australia,
don't care.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, you can fill out, and you can fill out in advance, and it's online. And actually, my initial experience was reasonably well done. I might have to pop that on my list of some of the things I do like about government, because I do keep that list just to try and balance myself. But we'll see how the results go. But my initial experience was good. And then, and I won't give the date yet, the first nighttime Australian rules football under electric lights at the MCG is reported. So the actual match took part between 2 military-based clubs, Collingwood Rifles versus East Melbourne Artillery. That was played on the evening of 5th of August, but contemporary newspapers reported it the next day on the 6th of August. And it was Australia's first organised night football game under electric lights. Drew a crowd of around 10,000 people, proving the spectacle could work. And it sort of did pave the way for the Friday night footy tradition. Now, what year do you reckon it was played in, DK? And a hint is that I'm not following the usual chronological order of oldest to most recent, so I can cunningly sneak in a beer drinking comment to take us to the next segment. What year do you reckon it was played?
Oh, I'm trying to think what year you said the first game was played. But
Let me go back and I'll give you that as a
hint.
A hint. That was early on. Just let me scroll through here. 1858 was the first game of Australian rules football.
Okay. That doesn't help me too much because I was thinking maybe it was in the... I'm just going to go with 1933 because I'm guessing electric lights weren't super common until, well after the turn of the century. So, because you would need like significant lighting to light up a playing field.
Globes weren't sufficient. They had to get these massive arc lights.
Yeah, the big arc lights. That's what I was thinking. So it makes sense that it was a military thing because they used to use arc lights for like searchlights and stuff like that. Actually, now that I say that, they were used.
Well, they were military-based clubs. So I don't know that it was a military exercise. It's just that the clubs available were military-based clubs.
Yeah, okay. But the military would have had arc lights. That's where I'm sort of thinking. So, but actually, they probably had arc lights. Oh, it would have been maybe. You know what? I'm going to change my answer. I'll say 1923.
You know what? I would have been guessing around there the same thing. 1879.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So, look, they had a couple more attempts, abandoned it, didn't quite work out. It wasn't until 1956 that they started doing it regularly. So, 1879. Now, as amusing as it would have been, I'm pretty comfortable guessing that after the game, neither of the clubs celebrated with light beer.
No. Bleh.
That was a bad pun too.
All right, as we all know, that sound means it's time for the 4X bottle top trivia questions. This week I said it's all about farming. That is the theme. And look, I'm not going to lie. I think some of these are probably going to be pretty tough to get unless you know exactly what they are. But they are very interesting. So make sure you play along at home as well. All right, question 1. Aussie farmers grow enough food to feed approximately how many people globally? And a bonus for this question, how much of what they produce as a percentage do they export?
Ooh. Wow, that's a great question because we've got some very healthy agricultural regions. Now, and I'm assuming I'm assuming that's going to include things like wine as well. That's not really that wasn't it. It was food, wasn't it?
Yep. Food specifically.
Much as some of us would like to consider wine a food.
Yeah, I think so.
So how many people?
Yep.
Oh, I wouldn't say that we're a breadbasket, but we're pretty good agriculturally. So it's how many people, including Australia or outside of Australia?
Yes.
Including Australia.
So how they get this stat, how the stat's kind of formulated is essentially the amount of food we produce in terms of calories divided by how much calories an average person needs per day gives us a number we can feed X amount of people based on the amount of food we produce, if that makes sense. Of course, people aren't going to sit there eating bowls of bloody oats and wheat.
Soylent Green,
obviously. But the idea is we produce this much food to feed this much amount of people.
Yep.
So
okay, I'm with, and that's a decent measure. I reckon it's going to be something that would surprise me even as well, and I think Australia is actually going to be a small amount of that. I'd have to guess somewhere between the 180 to 350. So I'm going to say 245 million.
That is a significant number. Now, what percentage of the food that they grow do you think they export?
Oh, what percentage of food do they? I would think probably. I would think it'd have to be somewhere like 65% would be my guess.
Yep. So We are a breadbasket to a point. So we produce enough food to feed approximately 60 million people a year.
Okay. So thought it might be a bit higher actually, but yeah.
Yeah. And we export about 77% of what we produce. Of course, these numbers kind of fluctuate depending on growing conditions and things like that. But it's pretty consistently around those sorts of numbers, which is... I actually thought it would have been a little bit higher than that, but compared to, we've only got 26 million people? Yeah. Maybe we've got a bit more, 27 million at this point. So we are, we can feed every Aussie and then his friend as well.
Sorry, did you say that 90 did or didn't include the Australian population?
No, it does include. It does include Australia.
So did you say 90 or 60?
60 million people.
So really, it's only about another half of that's already going to Australia.
Yep. So
that really surprises me.
We export 77% of what we produce. So we export a lot of what we make.
Well, I wasn't far off on that on the guess on the percentage, but I've obviously got the wrong idea of just the quantity.
Yeah. Yep. And I think that boils down to a lot of the farmland in Australia is used for basically grazing cattle because it can't be used for anything else because it's bloody the outback. So now, this is an interesting one that I think you will probably get. What percentage of Aussie farms are family owned?
Ooh, what percentage of Aussie farms? I reckon we're probably doing all right by a world standard, but it's going to be less than what a lot of us think. I'm going to say family owned, and I'm assuming family owned is going to be if you've got a family even operating under a company name that's still classed as a family as opposed to a corporation.
Yes.
I reckon it's going to be about, I think 42% would be my guess.
I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised that you're wrong on this one. It's according to the National Farmers Union and farmers.org, because I did try and find the original source of the statistic to kind of back it up. 95% of Aussie
You're kidding
farms.
Me.
Incredible. Genuinely incredible.
Wouldn't have even if you had given me three more guesses, I wouldn't have got close to 95.
Yep.
That's amazing.
I genuinely, and I'm a little bit skeptical of that number because it does sound so high, but according to the National Farmers Union, 95% of Australian farms are Aussie family owned, which is incredible. If that is even remotely close to true, that is
bugger me. Wouldn't have got close to that.
All right. Third question. What is Australia's largest crop by area and volume?
Oh, it's the same crop.
It's the same crop. So this is the easy one.
It had to be wheat, wouldn't it?
It is. Dig, dig, dig. Our farmers produce more than 30 million tons of wheat and between 60 and 90% depending on the yield per year, because obviously it does fluctuate. So between 60 and 90% of that is exported, and it genuinely is exported all over the world, from parts of Europe to parts of the Americas, to a lot in Southeast Asia, and actually a lot to the Middle East as well. So it goes everywhere. So if Australia stops producing wheat, a lot of people around the world suffer.
That's a lot of wheat.
A lot of wheat. Now, bonus question, or part two, I guess, to this is, which state grows the most? Who is the wheat growing capital of Australia?
God, I'm tempted first to say Western Australia. I'm just trying to think. I think it might be a toss-up between WA or New South Wales.
Oh, I'm going to give that to you because it really is a toss-up between the two. So on a quote-unquote normal year, WA is generally slightly ahead in production. However, over the last couple of years, I think just due to sort of rainfall and things like that, New South Wales has produced slightly more. Last year, it was 13.1 million tonnes, and Western Australia produced 12.4. Generally speaking, it's almost exactly the opposite. It's almost just over 13 million for Western Australia and just over 12 million tonnes for New South Wales. So it very much is a toss-up between the two. They're very, very similar, which is incredible considering the size of New South Wales compared to Western Australia. But I think that really highlights how there's sort of a wheat band where it grows really, really well, and basically outside of that climate range, it just doesn't grow pretty much at all. Queensland basically grows zero wheat. So
yeah, that doesn't surprise me. It's not the climate for
it's
it.
the completely wrong climate for it, and we basically can't grow it here at all. But 73% of the production in 2025 was New South Wales and Western Australia combined. So if you like bread, make sure that you thank your Western Australian and New South Welsh neighbours, because they're the ones that are making it all. So thanks, shout out to you guys. And of course, thank you to all of our farmers for the amazing produce that they make. Without them, we would all be very, very, very hungry. So on that, thank you so much for joining us for another Australia Talks. If you have any feedback or suggestions for topics, please get in touch with us at our email at australiatalks@proton.me. We'd also be grateful if you could subscribe and give us an honest review, as this helps us out immensely. But the best thing you can do for the show is to share it with a friend that you think might like it. Otherwise, join us next week for another episode of Australia Talks. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to tell your mum I love her.
Thank you, DK.